Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Contractor Radio. I'll be your host this time, and my name is Nathan Tebedo, and I'm really excited that you're listening to this. And thank you for participating and enjoying some of the content that we put out. This week is a little bit of a different week. It's been, close to 2 years ago now that the first Hero Sales Culture podcast was released. Now, that podcast was about 30 minutes long, and it was myself really trying to express this concept that I'd had on my mind for a number of years. After we aired that podcast, the reception that it got from people was significant. The message that it has resonated in the hearts of a lot of different people in their organizations and in their lives. And as a result, the Hero Sales Culture podcast that we did is still continuing to be the most downloaded and listened to podcast of all of Contractor Radio's content, thanks to you folks and resharing it and talking about it, and many of you integrating that concept into your businesses. Well, due to that overwhelming reception of that message, we actually expanded the Hero Sales Culture content, and I turned it into a keynote presentation. And that keynote has been delivered a number of different times in a number of different places. And some of you may have seen it and some of you may not have. But it occurred to us that maybe it would be a good idea to do a little bit of a reboot on that content and on that podcast to include the expansion of that content that you would find in the keynote that we did. And so here it is. I'd like to try and present to you guys the expanded and continued version of the Hero Sales Culture. But before I get into doing that, we are going to take just a real quick break for one of our sponsors.
Who doesn't love getting more referrals? GTR will make your referral game stronger than ever with our 4-step process. First, engage with customers through job status updates and push notifications. Then, motivate your advocates to send referrals and earn rewards. Third, track and manage all of your results through your company's dashboard. And finally, sit back and enjoy achieving up to 40 times ROI. GTR is the #1 referral platform for contractors, so book your demo today at getthereferral.com.
Welcome back to Contractor Radio. I am your host this week, Nathan Tebedo, delivering a reboot on our most popular podcast ever with some expansion on that content. And so I'm going to kind of get into talking a little bit about this concept. So some of the background on this concept is it's been in the works for, before I delivered that initial podcast, probably close to 2 years worth of trying to develop this idea that I had in my mind. And it came from my experience in being a member of a number of different sales organizations, as well as working with hundreds of contractors around the country, and just having this thing start to bubble up in my mind. But it took a long time for me to be able to express what it was I was seeing and what it was that I had experienced, and the differences between some great, phenomenal sales cultures and some that had a lot to be desired. And so before I really dive into kind of the meat of this concept, I need to set the table a little bit so that we understand some of the importance behind the real crux of this thing. So before I dive into this thing, I want for everybody who's listening to this to put a couple questions in the back of your mind. The first question I want you to put in your mind is, if you're in sales, what kind of salesperson am I? So as we move our way through this, I want you to have this question in the back of your mind. What kind of salesperson am I? I also want you to be asking the question, what kind of sales organization am I in? And if you're a sales leader or an owner, you should be thinking, what kind of sales culture have I cultivated? What kind of sales culture have I built? And what is the prevailing culture and attitude amongst the people in the sales department of my organization? So with those questions in the back of our minds as we move forward, let's talk a little bit about some of the fundamental components that they're going to help us address this. The first component is that every single business that exists, no matter what size or what it produces or what it does, has these 3 pillars. And those 3 pillars are sales, production and administration. Now, production, sometimes it could be delivery, it could be installation, it could be fulfillment. There's a lot of different components that go around to the concept of production. But no matter how big your organization is, you have those three pillars. Now, you might be saying, well, we've got a bunch of different departments inside of our company. We have HR, we have marketing, we have a finance department, all these different departments. And that's true. But you also have sales, production, and administration. And most of the other departments usually end up breaking off of one of those three pillars as the company grows. Now, each one of these different pillars has a different role inside the company, okay? Different role. They have different things that they're supposed to do. I've always typically seen the sales department as the face of the company, not the head, because that's where the brains are. I'm just kidding. But they're the face of the company. They're the people that are usually out in the public. They're doing home shows. They're doing networking events. They are running appointments. They are seeing people. People see the salespeople. And so oftentimes when they think about your company, they think about that salesperson because that's the person from the company that they know. I see production as the hands of the business. Production, delivery, fulfillment, installation, whatever it is. These are the people whose job it is to deliver the thing that the salespeople sold, right? There's a lot of responsibility that lays on these folks because all the promises that you made to this client have to be given to them by our production folks. Now, I also see admin, the administrative side of the business, as kind of like the body of the company, okay? The body of the company, because no matter what happens inside of a business, it will almost always flow through administration one way or another. These folks are dealing with accounting, they're dealing with technology, they're dealing with communication, they deal with payroll, they deal with customer communication and satisfaction. Administration does all kinds of things. That's why oftentimes when somebody says that so-and-so is the glue of the company, they're the people that hold this place together, they're probably an admin person. Now, why is this important? It's important because the sales pillar of our business is unique. It is unique very much to the rest of the company. And it's unique because the sales department has the ability to set the tone inside the business. Not only do they set the tone inside the business, they can set the tone outside the business as well. Sales has the ability to set the tone outside the business with regards to its belief or the salespeople's belief in the product that our company delivers or produces and provides. The degree to which our salespeople believe in what we do is the degree to which our clients will also believe and desire the thing that our company does. So if you have this attitude that, well, we sell windows, and you know what? Windows are windows, and you can buy them from me or you can buy them from somebody else. Our clients are going to feel exactly the same way about it, which makes us a bit of a commodity. But if we truly believe that our product is incredible, it's unique, it satisfies the needs of its clients, then our clients will feel the same way about it. Sales sets the tone externally with regards to the fact that we are generally the public or a prospect's first impression of the business. When it comes down to meeting people, people are generally meeting our salespeople. And so the first impression they have of our business when it comes to a human being is the sales group. They haven't generally met any other humans inside of our organization before they meet a salesperson. So we are that first impression as a sales organization to the rest of the world, and that will set the tone with what the company expects and thinks of the company going forward. We also set the tone externally with expectations. Salespeople are the ones who are normally going to communicate to the prospects and to the world what our product is like, what it does, how it works, what it's going to do for you, how it's going to be delivered, when you're going to be communicated with, how long it's going to take to produce it, how often you're going to hear from us, how that whole process is going to go. Our customers' expectations of our company are generally set by the sales group. So they set the tone externally. They also set the tone inside of our company. They set the tone inside of our company. One of the ways they do that is the way that salespeople view their customers and the general public. The degree to which your salespeople love your customers, and are committed to them and are excited about helping them will create an infectious environment inside of your business around how much the rest of the team is excited about our customers and excited about what we're going to do for them and how we're going to help them out. I can give you an example of this in the inverse. If you've been a salesperson or you've ever seen a salesperson come into the office with a brand new sale in their hands, super excited because they closed a deal and they flop this sale down on the desk and they go, man, this customer is going to suck. I know I've been guilty of that before. The thing is that nobody else in the business knows anything about that person who is now a customer of ours, except that they suck. Do you think that might have an impact on the way the rest of the team sees this person who they've never even met before? I think it might. Salespeople set the tone inside of our organization due to our work. And so what I mean by that is if the sales department is doing great, we're killing it, we're closing deals, we're advancing, we're bringing in revenue and jobs and customers, and the company's growing and we're hiring people and everybody's got a lot of work to do. That's a real positive thing when salespeople are doing well at what they do. But we can also set the tone from the perspective of how well we do our work. So if we're turning in incomplete jobs, we're over-promising with our customers, we're not doing our jobs to their fullest, which means that somebody else usually ends up picking up the slack. That's going to have an impact on the culture inside the company as well. If the salespeople aren't doing their jobs and they're leaving a bunch of loose ends for other people, that affects productivity, that affects efficiency, and oftentimes it affects other people's job reviews. When you're having to do a lot of other work that you shouldn't have to be doing, do you think that might create a little bit of frustration inside the company? I think it might. Salespeople also set the tone internally from the perspective of sheer numbers. Salespeople or the sales department are oftentimes the number one or number two largest of the departments in a company. Not in every case, but in most cases, I would venture to say. And so while we may be able to deal with one person who tends to be kind of grumpy or tends to be a little annoying or tends to be kind of down or negative, we may be able to deal with that one person who's like that because Gus is grumpy Gus, right? If your name is Gus, I apologize. But we can deal with one grumpy Gus. But 2, 3, 4, 20 grumpy Gusses or people with a bad attitude or people with a certain way of seeing the organization or our group, that's going to eventually begin to wear and tear on the people. And so the overwhelming or prevailing attitude that's carried by your salespeople just gets reinforced over and over and over again because of how many people are normally in the sales group. So sales is unique because sales sets the tone in almost every case, quite frankly. Now, in my experience, I have discovered or experienced or seen, however it is you want to phrase it, 2 primary types of sales cultures that I see in the world. One of these sales cultures is significantly more common in the construction industry that I see than the other one is, but the other one exists as well. So I'm going to deal with the most common one that I see first. I call this most common one the prima donna sales culture. The prima donna sales culture. Now, you might be picturing in your mind a specific person, and if you're in the same room as that person, try not to nudge them or look at them or make it too obvious. The prima donna sales culture are those guys who just think the world can't exist without them. That company can't do anything without them. They're the most important thing there, and that everybody else should be catering and serving their needs because they're in sales. Now, some of the signs that you're dealing with a prima donna sales culture would be that the sales team tends to push everybody else around. They walk into the office and they act like everybody in the office are their personal staff. You do this, you do that. This is how this is going to go. You go get me a cup of coffee, whatever it may be. They walk in there and start pushing everybody around because they're in sales. One of the other things that you'll see in a prima donna sales culture is that they usually get what they want. So if you work in a different department of your company other than sales, and you've ever found yourself in a situation where you're kind of at odds with the sales group over time, resources, effort, direction, in a prima donna sales culture, you're probably going to lose. In a prima donna sales culture, the inmates are normally running the asylum. They run the place. They're the ones who tend to decide what happens and what doesn't by deciding it and proactively doing it, or by just deciding they're not going to do whatever it is that the current directive is on the business. They run the place. They'll run roughshod right over the owner. When we decide we want to instill some standards, some better protocols, some better ways of doing things, some organization in a prima donna sales culture, if they don't like it, they don't do it, and everybody else just has to get over it. The reason for a prima donna sales culture, I believe, is fear. We have fear. We are afraid of our salespeople. We're afraid that if we do anything to upset our sales organization, it's going to impact our revenue. And we have to have revenue. If our company doesn't have any money, frankly, nobody has a job, right? The answer is yes. And so if we try to instill these standards, if we try to enforce certain things, these people might leave. God forbid they leave. Our $1 million sales producer walked out the door. They're afraid that if we do these things, it'll slow them down. They'll get pissed off. They won't produce or what have you. And so we're held captive by our concern over our revenue to these people who walk around acting like they own the place all the time. Probably the most common sales culture I see in our construction industry, the home service trades. Now, the other type of sales culture is a little bit different. The other type of sales culture is the one that I would call the monkey sales culture. Now, I'm going to have to explain this one just a little bit because it is a little more unusual. The monkey sales culture is what happens when ownership, product development, production management, the leadership all believe that our product is so good, it's so tight, it's so clean, it's so desirable that all we really need are some monkeys to go out there and make a phone call or run an appointment. And as soon as their prospect finds out about this amazing product, these people will just throw their money at our monkeys. And that our product basically sells itself. I have actually been experienced myself 2 monkey sales cultures. I was actually sitting at one point, I was sitting next to my sales manager at one point, and the guy who is in charge of our product was talking with my sales manager with me sitting right there. And the head of product development looks at me and he says, "No offense, Nathan," which we all know means that whatever it is he's about to say next is probably going to be offensive to me. But he says, "No offense, Nathan, but we all know that the real talent in this company are the people who develop and create our product." Now, having sitting there and being a bit of a smart aleck as I am, I said, "Well, I tell you what, I'm not going to disagree with you. However, last week I did a couple of demos on your amazing product and it crashed 3 times while doing that. Yet we have some new clients from last week." This is kind of the epitome of this concept of the monkey sales culture. So some of the signs that you're dealing with a monkey sales culture would be that the salespeople are not seen as particularly talented. Because if a product sells itself, how talented do you have to be to sell something that sells itself? We're not really interested in salespeople. We're interested in order takers. And order takers don't really have to work that hard, and therefore they're not really that talented, which means that they are replaceable, they're expendable. We can get just anybody to do the job. One of the other signs that you're dealing with a monkey sales culture is that the folks in a monkey sales culture get their compensation messed with regularly. Some of you who are listening to this may have experienced a monkey sales culture at some point in your life, and you probably nod in your head right now. Because if these people are not particularly talented, then why would they make good money? Because what exactly do we pay monkeys? We pay them bananas. And so in an organization where your quote unquote order takers, your monkeys are doing really well, we can't have that, because why would we pay people who aren't very talented a really great wage? And so they're consistently getting their compensation screwed with all the time. I can attest to this. I worked at a place where I had my compensation messed with. I had this probably 3 or 4 times in 2 years. The last sign that I identified is that in a monkey sales culture, these people are seen as a necessary evil. Nobody really likes them. Nobody appreciates them because, once again, they're not that talented. And since all the real talented people are too busy creating and delivering our product, we just have to have some monkeys to pick up a phone or run an appointment because these other people are too busy to do that. The reason that I believe you might deal with a monkey sales culture is pride. Pride and maybe some hubris or some arrogance about our product, or believing that it's so special that there aren't any other competitors against us because we're just so amazing. I might also venture to say that one of the other reasons we deal with a monkey sales culture would be greed. Because if all we have are a bunch of monkeys, we really don't need to pay them all that much. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, well, this sounds terrible. Nathan just laid out these 2 options, and are these the best thing we have? Is this it? You're either a monkey or a prima donna. Neither one of those sounds particularly good. And honestly, if it came down to choosing between one or the other, many would probably rather be in a prima donna sales culture than a monkey sales culture. Okay. Is this the best we can do? Can we really only have these 2 terrible options? Well, I say no, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that in the form of a story. But before I tell you this story, I'm going to take just a second, and I am going to introduce you to one of our sponsors for our podcast. We love our sponsors. They make our podcast possible. And so take a listen and take a watch to this. Welcome back to Contractor Radio, the Hero Sales Culture podcast, Rebooted. Okay, so we left off with talking about these 2 different options we have for our sales cultures. Neither one of them are particularly appealing. One of them sounds kind of appealing to salespeople, but not so appealing to the rest of the company. The other one is not appealing to salespeople whatsoever, but might be kind of appealing to some of the rest of the company. Okay, but I'm going to tell you a little story. So a number of years ago, I had just left one of the sales organizations that I belonged to that was a bit of a monkey sales culture. And I found myself at a new company in a new sales organization selling a completely different product. It was pretty radical change from what I'd been at before. Super informative though. So I'm in this position. I'm the new guy, and I'm building my pipeline, and I'm making some waves and having some fun and meeting all these people. And it didn't take too long before I had my first run-in with my team, my fulfillment team, my installation team. I had closed a deal, and I had some pretty good communication with our client in understanding their expectations, their timelines, what they were looking for, how they wanted this thing to go down, or what worked best for them. So I was trying to communicate these things to our fulfillment team about what the customer was expecting and what was going on. And our fulfillment team kind of shut me down. They said, Nathan, we don't do that. It doesn't work like that. That's not how we do things. That's not the way this is going to go. Now, having just come from a monkey sales culture, I was kind of like, okay, you guys are the experts. You know your job, whatever. You do you. I just kind of wipe my hands of the thing. Well, long story short, it didn't go very well. The customer ended up pretty upset, pretty bothered by the way things happened, unmet expectations, poor communication. It just went downhill, and it didn't go the way that it could have gone. Now, we got it all smoothed over and taken care of because it wasn't the end of the world, but we had it all kind of figured out and done. A couple days later, one of the senior salespeople from this organization comes over to have a conversation with me. And he says, hey, so I hear you had your first run-in with our team the other day. And I said, yeah, I did, but we're all good. We got it figured out and taken care of, and everybody's happy. He was like, okay, cool, good. And he says, so question though, why did that happen? Well, why do you think that happened? So me wanting to be upfront and transparent and honest over this whole thing, I said, well, our team dropped the ball. They didn't communicate with the customer well enough. They didn't meet the timelines that he had in mind. They didn't get the back and forth. Some expectations weren't met, and it kind of dropped the ball on this one. And the customer wasn't real happy about that. And so he said, okay. He says, they don't really do that very often. That's kind of unusual for them. I said, yeah, it is. They're a great team. They normally do a great job. And he says, so why do you think it happened this time? Right? So little warning light in the back of my head starts blinking, a little red light, and I'm going, okay, something else is going on here. So I thought, well, let's walk through this just a little bit. I said, I closed the sale. Customer and I had a great communication over expectations and timelines and all that kind of stuff. I tried to communicate that to the production group. The production group gave me some pushback on whether or not they do or don't do any of that. And then I thought this, but instead of standing up for the customer, I backed out of the whole situation. And because I didn't stand up for the customer and the customer's communication and expectations with me, I allowed our team to go down a path that was destined for failure. And I thought, oh, this is my fault. The fact that I didn't give the pushback, that I didn't put a little more effort into working with my team on behalf of the customer. Not only did I let my customer down, but I let my team down because I allowed them to do a thing that I knew probably wasn't going to work out. And I thought, oh no, this was on me. Then this senior sales guy said something to me that changed the way I viewed sales for the rest of my life. He said, Nathan, you might have noticed that the salespeople in our organization walk around our building and around our office, and they're looked up to. They're supported, they're loved, they're cared for. And the people in this building, for the most part, would do anything they possibly could for the salespeople that we have. And I said, yeah, I have noticed that. It's kind of weird, but it is cool. Like, so what is that? He said, the reason why this company loves their salespeople so much is because the salespeople here understand that everybody else in this building has jobs, has bills, they have children, they need food, they need savings, they need vacations, they need school supplies, they have medical bills. And all of those things that everybody else in this building has and needs is dependent on them. Our salespeople understand that everything that this organization needs is dependent on us as salespeople to provide. And so, if you want somebody on our production team to get a really great employee review from their boss, it's up to you to make it possible for them to do their job well. Boy. If you want our company to be able to hire more people or not have to fire more people, you have to do your job. If you want your clients to have the best experience possible and have the best product possible, you have to do your job. And the better you do your job, the better your team, the people you see every day, the better they do and the better their lives are. And the better your customers are and the better their lives are. And he told me, if you strive to shift your mindset to serving this company, they will treat you like a king. That changed the way I saw sales forever. And honestly, I walked away from that conversation with him feeling two things that were really incredible. Number one, I felt a weight. I started to feel this bit of a weight on my shoulders, that it wasn't just about me making sales and making commissions and trying to make some decent money for myself and my family. It was about the families and the people all inside that building and about my clients out in the world. And that started to feel like a bit of a weight on my shoulders. The other thing that it made me feel was it made me feel humble. I felt humbled by that conversation. The fact that I have in my hands and in my power the opportunity to be that guy for this company and for my clients. This was what I eventually called the hero sales culture. The hero sales culture really comes down to a shift in mindset. There's an adjustment in the way that hero salespeople, and this organization had hero salespeople. And it involves a shift in your mindset as to how you see your job and what your job is and what it's all about and what you're supposed to do and who you're supposed to serve. So, what do hero salespeople do? Well, first of all, they sacrifice. Hero salespeople, they sacrifice their time, they sacrifice their resources, they sacrifice their money, they sacrifice their ego, which might be the hardest one of all, and we'll get back to that. Hero salespeople also take the hit. Here's what I mean by that. In my circumstance with that team, I failed to take the hit. In other words, rather than facing a little bit of conflict with my team and a little bit of conflict maybe with my client and working that out, I decided to step out of the way and let my team and my client go to battle with each other. Instead of being willing and having the courage to stand in the gap, stand up for the customer, and set up my team for success, I ran away from that conflict in a bit of a cowardly way, quite frankly. And I'm not proud to admit that. But a hero salesperson stands in that gap. And if the customer is really upset at your team, you take that hit. And if your team is really upset at the customer, you take that hit. The hero salesperson is honored to be in their position. The fact that everyone else's lives are pretty much dependent upon us should come as a weight of responsibility and an honor that we have the chance to provide for people, for our team, for our clients, for our community in the way that we do. But what do we do instead? We use it as an opportunity to feel entitled. That's what we do. We feel entitled to be treated a certain way or talked to a certain way or have things done for us because we're in sales. And quite frankly, without sales, this company wouldn't exist, which is true. But I'm going to tell you something. If you're in sales and you're listening to this, I want you to understand when a company starts going through problems, when a company's going through financial struggles, do you know who they fire? They don't fire salespeople if you're at least hitting quota, doing the bare minimum. They won't fire a salesperson because you add to the revenue. But when you start to suck at your job, they fire an administrative assistant. They fire a production person. They fire somebody who adds to the overhead, not to the revenue. And so when you suck, somebody else loses their job. Now you might say, well, I've been fired as a salesperson before. And that's true. And in a lot of cases, it may be because of an underperformance. But like I said, if you're hitting the bare minimum the company asks from you, they're not going to fire you. They'll fire somebody else. That should come as an honor and as a weight to us and as a responsibility. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But fundamentally, at the end of the day, the hero salesperson stands in the gap. We stand in the gap in our economies. We stand in the gap in our communities. We stand in the gap for our clients. We stand in the gap for our team. We might be the difference between somebody getting a job and somebody not. And we should be willing to take the hit. Now, I hope that some of you out there hearing this right now are thinking, I would really like to be that guy, because that's what I thought when I first heard this. I want to be that guy. And so from that point forward, I endeavored to be. I started thinking about my job as an opportunity to give everyone else opportunity. And that the better I did, the better they would do. So it was really important that I would do well so that they had a chance. And I can tell you this, with that attitude shift that I had, my man, my senior sales rep guy, his name was Matt, was right. That company opened up to me like a flower. Those people supported me. They took care of me. Whether I asked for it or not, they would do anything to help me and help me be successful. As a matter of fact, I even had one of the people on my production team, her name was Kim, and she came over to my office and we were talking a little bit about a client and a situation and just making sure we had these things hammered out. And before she walked away, I said, Kim, I just want to let you know, I am super grateful to you for all the work that you do. Thank you for taking care of this. The customer's going to appreciate it. And you guys do a great job. And I just want to let you know how much I appreciate that. Kim says to me, Nathan, you and the guys in here, you're the top of the food chain. And if you guys aren't successful, none of us are. And I am excited to help you be as successful as you can be. And she turned around and walked out. I mean, I was borderline tears at that point. I couldn't believe it. Now, think about this for a second. You think I made a few extra phone calls that night? You think I sent out a few extra emails? I tightened up my proposals. I did a little extra work to try and make sure that Kim was taken care of. You bet your ass I did. That's what a hero sales culture looks like. Now, if you're like me, and I know I am, I'd be asking, okay, how do I do that then? How do I create a hero sales culture? What do we do in order to try and foster and create this environment inside of our business? If you're familiar with any of us over here at Contractor Coach Pro, who are the people who put on Contractor Radio, if you're familiar with us at all, you probably realize the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the leaders. Okay, so we got to put on our big people pants here, and we're going to talk about the leadership first. Okay, so leaders, if you're listening to me right now and you're an owner, you're a leader of some kind, production leader, sales leader, marketing, doesn't matter. If you sit on that leadership team, one of the things that is incumbent upon you is departmental communication. Here's what I mean by that. It is on you, not your team, to communicate to the rest of the team the ins and outs and the frustrations and the difficulties and the necessity of the other departments. So here's what I mean by that. It is your job, Mr. Sales Manager or Mrs. Sales Manager, to go to your sales team and communicate to them how hard it is to be in administration or in production. You're dealing with labor shortages, massive price increases. You're dealing with weather complications. You're dealing with upset customers. You're dealing with the little tiny minutia things. And there's a ton of it, especially in a larger organization that's doing a lot of volume. There's a lot of complicated things going on a regular basis. So think about this, Mr. and Mrs. Salespeople. All the projects that you're sending into production, depending on the number of salespeople in your organization, multiply that by the number of salespeople in your organization. They're not just getting the number of leads the number of sales that you're sending in. They're getting everybody's and all the complication involved in every single deal we sold from every single salesperson. That's hard work. It's stressful. There's a lot that goes into it. And administration is dealing with communication back and forth and trying to calculate commissions and pay the bills and make sure that we're everything's working smoothly and on time and all of those components. Sales leaders, owners, managers, you need to communicate to your salespeople how difficult the jobs are of the other people in the organization. That should come from you to your team. And similarly, you as the leader need to communicate to the rest of the team the ins and outs and the difficulties of being in sales. Think about it. If you're a 100% commission salesperson, sometimes you're not necessarily sure how much money you're going to make. You could put an 8, 10, 12-hour day, and you could do it days and days in a row and not make a dime. We don't get paid by the hour. It's hard to be in sales. Sometimes you're on a hot streak. Sometimes you're on a cold streak, and you couldn't close a door. Clients oftentimes question your character before they ever even meet you just because of what you do for a living. There's some difficulty and some complication that goes into sales, and there's a lot of stress in it too. And so leaders, you need to communicate to the rest of the team. This is not an easy position. And these people are critical. By the way, these people are so critical that if we didn't have them, you wouldn't have a job. And the reason why leaders need to communicate this is because we do not allow our teams to go to war. And I'll give you an example. If you don't think that you need to communicate this to the team, to both sides of the team and all sides of the team as the leader, I want you to try this tonight. I want you to go to your significant other tonight, and I want you to look them deep in the eyes, and I want you to tell your significant other how lucky they are to have you. We'll see how well that goes for you. Right now you're going, no, I'm not going to do that. Then don't let your team do it, which is my second point. Leaders need to model advocacy and standing in the gap. We do not let our teams go to war with one another. I heard somebody say this not too long ago. I think it was just late last year. They said, well, I've got these two leaders and they're kind of smashing each other a little bit and just not being, I'm going to let them figure it out. They're adults. No, those two people will tear your company apart. You as a leader, stand in the gap. You take the hit. If your production department is pissed off at the admin or they're pissed off at the sales, you take the hit from them and then you turn and go find solutions and disseminate and fix that issue. And it goes vice versa. We do not allow our people to go to war. So that means that if we're going to get beat up a little bit, in order to allow peace and efficiency and love and tranquility inside of our company, then we do that. You're called a leader for a reason. And it's not always sunshine and roses. All right, so hopefully I've beat up on the leaders enough here. For sales, okay? Now remember, these are the ingredients to try and build a hero sales culture. For sales, we need to follow that example that we hopefully have. And if we don't have that example, we set it, of advocacy and standing in the gap. If your customer is pissed off at your team, You do not allow your customer to go screaming at your team. And if your team is upset at your customer, you do not allow your team to take it out on your customer. They can take it out on you. Why? Because you can handle it. You can handle it. I had a scenario where I had a client who had a problem with the product, and they called my customer success team. And this person, his name was Bob. Bob laid into my support person, just ripped them apart. Now, to my support person's credit, they didn't come tattling to me about it or anything. I actually heard about it through the grapevine. Kind of randomly found out that Bob just shredded this person. So I went back to my office, picked up the phone. I called Bob. I said, "Hey, Bob, how you doing?" He says, "I'm good." I said, "I hear you called our support the other day with a problem." Bob says, "Yeah, I did." And I said, "Did they get you all taken care of, Bob?" He says, "Yep, we're good. We're all copacetic. We're all taken care of." I said, "Great." I said, "Let me tell you something, Bob. If you ever feel the need or the desire or the frustration, and you need to scream and yell at somebody over some issue or some problem you have, you call me, because it is unacceptable for you to talk to anybody on my team like that." Now, and I did. I really did say that. In case you're wondering, I didn't make that story up. About a month later, Bob called support again because he had some other situation he needed help with. And my support person comes upstairs this time to talk to me and says, "Hey, I just got off the phone with Bob." And I was like, "Okay, how'd that go?" And they said, "Bob was just the sweetest thing on the planet." And I said, "Okay, good." And then they said, "Bob told me that he was terrified to hear from Scary Nathan again." So my support person then says, "Thank you." Think about it. That support person certainly doesn't sit in the same position I do. They don't deserve to be treated that way. And so we stand in the gap. We can do it. Okay. Next thing, salespeople, part of our ingredients for being a hero salesperson is we sacrifice. Here's the thing. At this company, we had a central office with a parking lot and an office building and everything. Nobody knew what time the sales team got to work. And the reason was because when everybody else started getting to work, 8, 8:30, 9, 9:30, our cars were the ones that were in the parking lot before everybody else showed up. Nobody knew what time we got to work because we were already there. And then when everybody else was leaving, 4:30, 5, 5:30, our cars were still in the parking lot. We were on a first name basis with like the building's cleaning crew, Rosita and her husband. They were wonderful people, but we sacrificed because we put in that extra time. Because when Kim told me that it was a pleasure for her to help me be as successful as possible, I cannot help but respond to that with pouring everything I can into making them successful as well. We sacrifice. I had a situation where I was on the road and I had a lot of work to do with a bunch of different clients. I had calls to make and appointments to meet and proposals to send out. And I was getting a little overloaded. And so I reached out to my admin gal, Cindy. And I said, "Hey, Cindy, I need some help. Could you please put together a proposal for this particular thing and email that over to so-and-so?" Now, that was not Cindy's job. She was not my assistant. She was not the person she was an admin person. So she helped with things, but I was asking her for something that was a little outside of her lane. Cindy says, "Sure, Nathan." So I did all the pre-work. She built the proposal, sent it off. I did the post work. I closed the deal. I gave Cindy half of the commission. Now, in the long run, do you think that half of that commission really meant that much to me at the end of the day? Not really. At the end of the day, it didn't. It meant the world to Cindy. And it wasn't about the money. It was about the recognition and the appreciation. Cindy was a bit of a character. She took some of that money and she was proud to display this to me. And she went and bought a pair of almost like knee-high patent red leather Doc Marten boots. Okay. And she was so happy to show me these. And then she told me that every time she sees those boots or wears those patent red leather Doc Martens, she thinks about me. I'm not so sure how I feel about that, but the point is, I never had a problem getting help or support from Cindy ever. And I didn't have to split my commissions with her every single time she helped me out. But that appreciation was that key component. We sacrifice. We also take responsibility. We see our position as an opportunity to be that hero, to help those people, to stand in the gap, to advocate for clients and to advocate for our team. We see that as a responsibility, not an entitlement. I can't hammer on that enough. It is not an entitlement. It's a duty. We should be honored and humbled by the opportunity to have it. Now, ingredients for sales culture. Okay, we're still talking about that. Our team. Okay, so now I'm talking to people who may or may not, who probably aren't in the sales department. We're talking about the production folks, talking about the administrative folks. If you happen to be listening to this, here's what you can do to help in this concept. Support. Your salespeople need support, especially if they're good. If they're good and they're busy, they need support. We gotta tell, hey man, thank you. We gotta show them that we're there to help. We're part of the team. We're not working against them. We're not trying to make their lives more difficult or make their life harder. Because remember, if they don't do their job, we don't have one. Your salespeople need support. They also need patience. Some of the people in your organization, if they hear this, they might endeavor to try and be a bit of a hero salesperson. We're going to have to be patient with them. Sometimes we have young sales guys or new salespeople that are new to this whole profession in this business. And for whatever reason, when God decided to create salespeople, he left out attention to detail and organization. Don't know why. It just happens to be what it is. We need to be patient with us. We're on our own path too, and many of us do want to and are attempting to do the right thing. We're not malicious, at least not most of us. So be patient with us and help. If we could do something better, don't come in there and tell us that we didn't do our job very well. Come in and show us how we could do it better that helps you and me. Lastly, we need that appreciation. Kim showed that appreciation to me in that story I told earlier. We should know that it's helpful to know that you see our efforts and that you appreciate what we do. Give your sales guys a high five. Tell them thank you once in a while, especially when they're having a bad day. Like I said, you could have a sale. In most cases, if you work in production or administration, you work an 8 or 10 hour day, you're getting paid kind of regardless of what you do. A salesperson could work an 8 or 10 hour day and not make a dime. There's a lot that goes into that. So show your guys some appreciation. You can help and encourage them to be hero salespeople by being a hero to them. This street can flow both ways. There's 2 more major components to getting this done on the part of you sales folks. And this will also be helpful to anybody else who happens to be hearing this. And I'm going to bring those 2 pieces to you right after one last word from our sponsors. Welcome back to Contractor Radio as we wrap up our hero sales culture rebooted. So I told you that there are 2 more concepts that we need to have in mind as part of the ingredients to building a hero sales culture. So I don't know how many of you out there have ever done any rock climbing or any mountaineering or anything like that, but there's this concept in climbing, whether it's rock climbing or mountaineering, called a crux move. Okay, a crux move is the move or the effort on which the success of your climb depends. So what that means is if you've got the energy, the strength, and the talent to get to this place where this crux move is, you probably have all the energy, talent, and ability to finish the climb after the crux move. But the crux move is where all of that stuff has to come together, because if you don't hit that move, your climb is over. Okay, maybe even permanently. That was a little dark. But the first of these two crux moves is this concept of humility over hype. And this occurred to me after I had a couple of guys come up to me after I talked about the hero sales culture. And they told me, they said, "Hey, Nathan, we've been trying really hard in our companies to be hero salespeople. We've been listening to what you're saying and we're putting in this effort. And we don't feel like these people um, really, really see us as heroes. I don't think they really see us as heroes. And so we're struggling with that. Right." And I said, "Well, here's the problem. You are not entitled to be looked at as a hero. That's not up to you. How they see you and what they decide to think about you, you can't do anything about that. What you can do is you can give your team and your people an opportunity to see you that way through your behavior. That's all you can do. You can act and be and function as a hero, and then you let the chips fall where they may. Always do the right thing. So be humble over hype." See, my boys were asking about how to get some hype because they thought they were trying to do the right thing. And no doubt they probably were. But they were looking for that hype. When in reality, the key is that humility is so much greater and so much more powerful than seeking hype, which for whatever reason kind of tends to be the opposite with us sales folks. So, first crux move, humility over hype. The second crux move is a little bit different. And there's a story around this one. Hopefully you're enjoying my stories and I haven't put you guys to sleep. But a number of years ago, there was a company that hired me to come be the director of business development. So they wanted me to really come in and try and help out their sales organization because the sales side of what they were doing was just a complete wreck. I got in there and I was looking, I was like, man, I don't know how these guys are making any sales. There's not much organization here. There's a lot of structure needed and we got to get some work done. There was a lot of work to do. And believe it or not, just hiring me didn't fix all their problems. All right. If you gasped, then I agree with you 100%. So anyway, so week over week and month over month, we as a leadership team continued to chip away at these struggles that we had in this department, trying to find solutions and trying things, and this worked and this didn't work, and just making our way through trying to get this thing straightened out and get it put together really. And I can tell you this, that over time, I started to feel a little grumpy about it, a little insecure, a little defensive would probably be the best word. Because week after week in our leadership meetings, we're constantly addressing this stuff that I'm trying to fix and trying to work on. And over time, started to wear on me a little bit, started to get a little bit raw. And so I remember the day that this happened. I was in New York City with my boss, and he and I were walking across Times Square back to our hotel. And I was explaining to him a little bit about how I felt. And I'll never forget what he said. As we're walking, and I'm explaining to him how I feel, he says to me, "Nathan, nobody blames you for this situation. Everybody knows that the condition of this department's not your fault." And I said, "Wait, what?" He said, "Nobody's blaming you for the condition of this department. We know you didn't do this, but it's your responsibility to fix it." And it was like a light bulb went on, struck by lightning right in the brain. I stopped right there in the middle of Times Square, and I was looking up, and I was going, "Oh my gosh!" And he stops, and he goes, "What?" And I said, "There's a difference between responsibility and blame. There's a difference between responsibility and blame." And I was starting to feel personally insecure because I thought in my own heart that I was starting to get blamed for this situation and it was attacking my ego. And so when it dawned on me that there is a difference between blame and responsibility, it was like 1,000 pounds of weight got lifted off of my shoulders. And because I was able to detach my ego and my own sense of self-worth from this problem, knowing that I didn't cause it and it wasn't my fault, but I did have the responsibility and opportunity to provide the solutions and fix this situation. And man, I got to tell you, when I got back to the office, I attacked our situation, our struggles, our problems. I attacked it like a wild animal, feeling completely unencumbered by being worried about getting blamed for any particular situation. The reason why this is a crux move is because oftentimes we're afraid of looking like the bad guy. We're afraid of having people think that we screwed up or that we did something wrong. And we want them to know, oh, no, we're good. We didn't make the mistake. This person over here made the mistake. And that can keep us from being willing to stand in the gap once again and take the hit and seek the solution and solve the problems. Now, don't get me wrong. If you are to blame, put your big boy pants on and take your lumps like you should and then move forward. But if you're not to blame, don't let that keep you from taking the responsibility of being a leader in that situation. The last thing I'm going to leave you with is this. Hopefully, you've gotten some answers to those questions that I asked at the beginning of this. What kind of salesperson am I? What kind of sales organization am I a part of? What kind of sales organization have I allowed or have I built? Hopefully, you've got some answers to those questions. But now I'm going to leave you with this question. What would it look like? What would it look like if inside of our organizations, we decided to compete with one another over who can out-hero the other? What would it look like if we competed with one another over who can be the greater hero to the other? Thank you guys very much for joining us in this episode of Contractor Radio. We'll see you next time.